Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we discuss, educate and talk about industry news and hot topics, company reviews and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International. With a career covering nearly 2 decades, Mining International partners with new and junior miners and larger predominant players in the market. With no further ado, here is your host, Rob Tyson.
Hi mining community, welcome again to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is James Campbell, who's the MD of Botswana Diamonds, who are a diamond exploration and project development company who hold exploration license in Botswana and South Africa. James has spent over 30 years in the diamond industry in a variety of roles, which obviously we'll cover that shortly in this podcast. I'm really interested in doing this podcast, especially with the content and information that James is going to provide around diamonds, because it's a sector that I haven't actually recruited in or know much about, and I'm sure many of our listeners probably won't know too much and probably know little about diamonds. So I think a lot of us are going to learn something from this podcast. So I want to hand over to you. So I want to welcome James Campbell. How you doing, James?
Very good, Rob. Lovely to chat to you this afternoon.
Yeah, and I'm in the UK and you're in South Africa.
Absolutely. September is the only month of spring in South Africa. We go from winter to summer very, very quickly.
Right. And I was just saying earlier, obviously I'm in the UK and we just left the summer. But today it seems it's warm as well. I've got my shorts and t-shirt on in September, which generally speaking isn't the month that you would have shorts and t-shirt on, especially in the UK. So yeah. Right, let's kick off with this. I want to understand a little bit more about, obviously, your background from when you sort of graduated, and if you can tell the audience a little bit about how you've developed your career to where you are today. I've then got some questions around the industry, and then we talk about a little bit about Botswana Diamonds before concluding. So if you can tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Robert, actually all started at school. I went to Framlingham College in Suffolk as a boarder. My father was in the Royal Air Force, so he moved around Europe an awful lot. And when I was doing my A-levels of maths, geography and chemistry, the school encouraged you to do a minority subject. So I did a minority subject in geology, and I found that actually more interesting than my 3 A-levels. So following getting my A-levels, I went to the Imperial College of Science and Technology in London and read a degree in mining and exploration geology. And in my very final year, you were encouraged to go and do an honours project somewhere, which would either be mapping on some remote Hebridean island, which would be cold and windswept and probably quite wet, or finding some job employment. And I was very fortunate to be employed by De Beers at their Venetia mine prospect. It's now a mine, and in fact, the mine is now going underground. And I spent a wonderful 3 months logging various kimberlite facies and other things in the far northern Transvaal of South Africa. So when I graduated, I was delighted to be able to be offered a job in diamond exploration by De Beers. And in fact, I spent just under 22 years at De Beers, initially starting in diamond exploration. And myself and my team were involved in the discovery of 3 diamond mines in the northern province of South Africa, going through the various ranks as one does in a large corporate, with probably a couple of notable appointments. I was very fortunate to be the executive chairman, Nicky Oppenheimer's personal assistant. In fact, his first personal assistant for 3 years. So that gave me a very good insight into how to run a company, corporate management and the such like. And before I left De Beers, my final job was general manager responsible for resource development and advanced exploration for De Beers' global activities. The diamond exploration bug and diamond development bug has actually never left. So since leaving De Beers, I joined Dr. John Teeling in African Diamonds, And a couple of notable things about African diamonds is that we returned 25 times to our original shareholders. And there I joined my old mentor, Alex van Sale, who was the technical director. And alongside De Beers and then alongside Lucara Diamond Corporation, we developed what is now known as the Karowe mine, a fabulous diamond mine, host to many of the world's largest diamonds in northeast Botswana. Lucara had a larger checkbook. They bought out African Diamonds, and they're now the wholly owned company owning Karowe. I joined Lucara for a while. I then joined Rockwell Diamonds as their chief executive officer, where we were probably the largest alluvial diamond miner at the lowest cost in the world. I also led a company called West Africa Diamonds PLC, also with Dr. John Teeling as chairman. And there we did a reverse takeover of Stellar Diamonds. And Stellar Diamonds last year was bought out by Newfield Resources, developing diamond deposits in Sierra Leone and Guinea. After leaving Rockwell Diamonds, I rejoined my old chairman, Dr. John Teeling, into Botswana Diamonds PLC, which is a London AIM and Botswana Stock Exchange listed company with projects in Botswana, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. So that's me.
That's you, yeah. It's funny. I was obviously listening to your history and your career, and I thought to myself, you've obviously been in diamonds for over 30 years. Have you at any time, and obviously diamonds must be a passion to you, and mining in diamonds, have you ever thought about any other commodities?
Rob, it's a very interesting question. In my spare time, I was chairman of the Joburg Ballet for 15 years, almost 15 years. And that's a non-profit organization. And that's chiefly because my wife was a ballerina and now a ballet teacher. My daughter danced there for a short period of time, is now a ballet teacher. I'm chairman of a leadership development group called Common Purpose. In fact, with its centre actually in the UK. It's a wonderful group whose centrepiece is all around cultural intelligence and leadership beyond authority. Very passionate about that too. And I think I'm coming up for 19 years and 8 months or 9 months as such. I was one of the founding directors. And then during my sojourn with Dr. John Teeling and African Diamonds, we floated a gold company called Swala Resources. That went on to become a company called Concordia Resources. And I think that's now kind of split. And one of them is called Marillion and the other one is called Kaizen, I think, because I still have the shares. But my passion has always been in the exploration and development of diamond deposits, and in particular in Africa, because that's equally my passion.
Yeah. So what's about diamonds that you actually like?
I think, gosh, that's a very good question, Rob. On an emotional level, I'll answer it first, is that I think diamonds represent all that is good in humanity. It is the ultimate gift of love, the ultimate expression of love. And in itself, it actually has no value whatsoever, but it has huge value in that it does represent that ultimate store of love. Secondly, I don't think there's actually anything more beautiful than a cut polished diamond, especially cut polished diamonds which are flawless or which have a different color attached to it. So those are from an emotional perspective. From a technical perspective, the assessment, exploration and assessment of diamond resources is probably one of the most technically challenging areas in any form of commodity or resource development when you can compare it to things like coal and gold and bauxite. I'm not trying to demean those in any way. There is a level of additional technical sophistication and complexity in diamonds, and you are required, particularly in terms of stock exchange rules and other things, to be very, very deeply experienced to work as a competent person, and actually more importantly for us, to be successful in what you do.
Yeah. From a technical perspective then, what is really technical about obviously trying to extract diamonds then? That is probably different than, say, other commodities, whether it's base precious metals, etc.?
Well, in fact, with diamonds, you have three different variables which you have to measure. With most other minerals, it typically is two. And the two of most of the other minerals are volume or tons, call it what you will, the mass of the deposit itself, and the other is grade. If I use gold, for example, you will have a deposit of X grams per ton. You'll go to your newspaper and it will tell you what the price of gold happens to be, and you can make your own forecast in terms of where the gold price is going to be. With diamonds, of course, you have tons in terms of the volume within a kimberlite pipe or the secondary alluvial deposit. You have grade, and in the diamond world, we measure that in terms of carats per 100 tons. And a carat is actually 0.2 of a gram and comes from the old carob seed, which is found in Kimberley in South Africa. So you're looking at parts per billion, or in rare cases, parts per million. And then the third layer, which adds the additional complexity, is the diamond price itself, which is dollar per carat. In some deposits, for example, the Letseng mine in Lesotho, you could get over $3,000 a carat, because these would typically be large and very, very high quality stones. Or you could go to the other end of the extreme, for example, in Marangi in eastern Botswana, where you would get $15 to $20 per carat, because the diamonds tend to be small and generally poor quality. And the only way of assessing the diamond value is taking a large enough sample and selling the diamonds.
Got you. So obviously a big price variance there, I see.
Of course, if you wanted to buy your missus the best quality diamond, it would look magnificent, but it will cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if you're prepared to go for a kind of a brown thing, it might not cost so much money.
Yeah. One question, and I don't know if this is a stupid question to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What are diamonds used for? Is it only used for sort of jewellery purposes, or is there other things that you can use diamonds for?
Oh, no, there's a huge market in diamonds. Obviously, from a profitability perspective, the focus is very much on gem diamonds, diamonds that would go into jewellery. But there is a very, very large business in cutting tools. For where you put diamond dust. Typically, these would be synthetic diamonds, whether it be to cut rock, to cut glass. At the bottom of your core drilling rig or your percussion drilling rig, the drill bit would typically be made of synthetic diamonds. And what I have been reading about recently as well is that maybe the next development in conductors for computers would be in diamonds as well. So there are many, many different applications a diamond can have. But in our world, particularly from a natural diamond perspective, and I work only in the natural space, not in the synthetic space, our target market is very, very much so the jewellery space.
Yeah, okay, no worries. And I suppose with the supply and demand, how has the supply and demand been for the last 10 years? And what is the future sort of supply and demand likely to be? Do you have sort of big peaks and troughs like other commodities, or is it pretty more consistent, or is it on a different life cycle to, say, some of the other commodities out there?
Robert, it's a very, very good question. Is that if I try and address your last point first, yes, the diamond market is cyclical, but the diamond market is not one market. It is many different markets. If I just look at the two end members in the diamond market, if I firstly look at the large, better quality stones, where consumers are going to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars for a stone. These would be obviously your ultra high net worth individuals, and where changes in the global economic climate would not hurt them so much. So the volatility in those kind of stones is much, much less. Going to the back end of the market, where you're looking at smaller pieces of jewellery, where people are saving up their 3 or 4 months salary for an engagement ring or something like that, that is a lot more volatile. because they would have mortgages to pay for, kids in school, all sorts of different things they would have to pay for. So the pricing in those categories is very volatile. In terms of how it follows the overall market, is diamonds do tend to drop in price very quickly following a global shock, but they do tend to react actually very positively in the exact kind of opposite scenario. I just want to kind of digress a little bit into the market itself now, which has happened over the past year. De Beers launched the Lightbox initiative last year, which was all about manufacturing, selling synthetic diamonds. Up until that point, there was always a business in synthetic diamonds, but it was always on the periphery on the business. But De Beers, putting their name attached to it, has created some tension, competitive tension in the market. And this tension has taken place already in markets such as sapphire, pearl, and on all those other kind of precious stones as well. So it is something which we would have expected. And the impact of that is that the smaller, lower quality diamonds, natural diamonds, have fallen in price significantly, up to 30% or more, actually over the past year, as some consumers are switching into synthetics, which are a lot cheaper than the natural diamonds itself. But the coloured stones and large stones have maintained their market. Now, put that into an overall picture of the supply-demand situation too as well, which is the overall strategic picture. That no large-scale diamond mine has been found for the last 10 years or so. The only one, in fact, was the Karowe mine, which I mentioned earlier, which African Diamonds developed alongside Lucara. So from a supply-side perspective, natural diamonds are beginning to taper off. The larger mines are getting deeper, they're becoming more expensive. There's very little money for exploration. People funding what I'm looking for today, even De Beers, which used to spend $100 million plus a year, are now spending a fraction of money on exploration. And as it takes about 10 years from discovery through to mining, at least in the next 10 years' time, from what we know of course, in the public domain, there are no new diamond mines coming on board. Then you look at the demand situation. 50% of the world's diamonds are typically sold in America, and 50% of those are typically sold between Thanksgiving and New Year. It's quite remarkable. Now, as we all know, the American economy under President Trump has done remarkably well. We can say all sorts of things, but the economy is holding up well, and that's good for us diamond people, because it gives a strong, robust level of diamond demand, but typically at the bottom end of the market. At the other end of the market, you've had the growth in China and in India and the Far East, which is both at the lower end and at the top end. So one is seeing a consistent year-on-year gradual growth in the diamond market, where people's aspiration is to spend 4 months or more of their salary on a diamond engagement ring. And as the economies in those countries grow, the demand for those kind of diamonds grow at the same time. So you do see a widening supply-demand gap, and the result of that is gradual overall improvement in diamond prices over time. But of course, with short-term volatility, as I mentioned a moment ago.
Okay. So would you say the demand for diamonds is down to really the spending power of consumers? Very
much so. It is exactly that, because it is seen as a discretionary purchase. We are competing for people a nice car, going on a holiday, a lifestyle experience, etc. And that's why we particularly market that natural is good, natural is better. Why would you want to go and buy a synthetic stone made in an industrial press, which represents love, for goodness sake? It can't be anything further than truth. You want something that was created in the bowels of the earth, 3.5 billion years ago, and you want to know where it came from and all those kind of good things. Yes, so it is a discretionary purchase, absolutely. And the diamond market has to compete with other discretionary purchases too.
Yeah. And I want to go back to more of a technical question. What's the difference between sort of mining diamonds and, say, mining gold? The actual the way that you actually mine mine diamonds. Is there much difference in the way that you go out and mine the product?
No, Rob. The
I
difference
see.
would be in the processing side. There are
Okay.
open cast diamond mines.
Yeah.
There are underground diamond mines, and there are basically two kinds of diamond deposit, which will determine how you would mine it. The first kind is called a kimberlite, named after Kimberley in the northern Cape of South Africa. And essentially, a kimberlite is an extinct volcanic plug, which sampled carbon beneath the diamond stability field, where carbon exists actually as diamonds. There are about 6,000 kimberlites in the world, 600 of which contain diamonds, of which 60 have been or are diamond mines. And when you start, and if it's near the surface, you have a standard open cast operation. And as you get deeper, you would start to look at sub-level caving or block caving, other mining techniques which are used in many, many, many other commodities. From a processing perspective, it is slightly different, because what you're trying to recover is obviously you want to recover all of your diamonds, starting from the largest diamond to the smallest diamond, and you want to recover it by absolutely minimizing diamond breakage.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing more criminal than breaking 1,000 carat stone into 2,500 carat stone. So you have a gradual process of liberation, screening, concentration, and then finally some form of X-ray or tomographic recovery to actually release the diamonds from the ground mass itself. What is really quite nice about the diamond processing is there are no chemicals used, and it does have a very low energy footprint too.
Okay. That's interesting for some of our obviously technical listeners, obviously mine engineering and processing. So that's interesting to know. Right, we'll just go on now to speak more about Botswana diamonds. So just wonder if you can give us an overview of the company and some of the projects that you're currently involved in.
Absolutely, Rob. Botswana Diamonds is working in Southern Africa and focusing on Botswana, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. We typically focus in brownfield development areas where we are looking to discover or re-evaluate kimberlites which were discovered some time ago, but because of new technology, we are able to assess the results in a different way, and they could possibly be more economic. If I cover the kind of different countries and the different project areas, starting probably from the least active area to the most active area. We have a joint venture with Vast Resources PLC, another London AIM-listed company in Zimbabwe. And this joint venture has two legs. One leg is to develop a concession within the very famous Marangi diamond fields. And the second one is for general diamond exploration across the whole of Zimbabwe. We are yet to, when I talk we here, Vast and Botswana Diamonds are yet to conclude final terms with the government of Zimbabwe. We hope it is imminent, and then we can really get cracking. We've done the conceptual studies, we've done the field visits, we've planned exactly what we want to do, and we're just standing at the kind of starting line waiting for that gun to go so we can get going. Then moving on to Botswana, where we are also listed on the Botswana Stock Exchange. We have two major ventures there. The first one is the Sunland Minerals venture, which was for some period of time partnered with Alrosa, who is a major Russian explorer and developer, the largest actually in the world. And we're currently in advanced discussions with another major producer to take over from Alrosa, essentially walk in their footsteps. But meanwhile, we are exploring, and we're focusing here very much on the central Kalahari region of Botswana, close to Gem Diamond's old mine of Gagu. They've now sold it to a local grouping, and Petra's KX36 discovery. And then secondly is the Maibwe joint venture, which is joint venture with BCL, which was the second largest mining company in Botswana, is sadly in liquidation. So we're caught up in the whole of their liquidation workings, but we're hoping to be able to release it from that fairly shortly, because that project itself had some very tantalizing microdiamond results, and we can't wait to roll up our sleeves, get on with it, and restart the exploration process. And then moving into South Africa, Botswana Diamonds has a joint venture with a group called Vatomi Mining Pty Limited, who have a number of projects across the country. Again, starting from kind of the bottom rank moving upwards. There's the Palmeetkat kimberlites, which are about 50 kilometers where I'm sitting from at the moment. It's right next door to a currently operating mine, and it has not been evaluated through the lens of new technology. So we would like to do exactly that. Then there is the Mooikloof kimberlite, which is on the border of Botswana, almost adjacent to De Beers' old The Oaks diamond mine. Again, that's a project which was looked at in the mid-80s, and I was involved with the discovery and the evaluation of that in 1988, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done now. Then we move on to the Free State kimberlites, which were mined in the 1880s, would you believe? And we rediscovered these not by using any new technology, but by visiting the Africana Museum and other archives in Bloemfontein and Kimberley to look at old producers back in that time. And we found that these kimberlites were old producers. And from what we can see, very, very little work has actually been done on them. And then probably our flagship project across all three countries in South Africa is the Thorny River project, where we're busy exploring an echelon suite of kimberlite dikes and blows. And we're in the throes of being awarded a mining permit adjacent to the iconic Marsfontein mine, which had a payback of 3.5 days.
Right, okay. That's exceptional.
I don't know of any actually other, Rob, which had a payback of such a short period of time. And it would be of no surprise to you that we would be looking to kind of develop some of the residual dumps and gravels immediately surrounding Marsfontein.
Yeah, certainly. It seems you're very busy and you've got a lot of things going on. I was then going to ask another question. What other jurisdictions are you sort of exploring and wanting to explore, whether that's in Africa or even outside of Africa?
At the moment, our board is very firmly focused on Southern Africa.
Yeah.
Now, if I look at the three countries where I operate, South Africa, Botswana and Zimbabwe, and of course we would look at Lesotho and Eswatini, which are within that kind of general environment, and of course Namibia. And why that is the case is that these are all relatively short flying distance from where I am in Johannesburg, or a very short flight. Our business model, but maybe if I step back and tell you a little bit about our business model, which will help actually answer it. Our business model is such that I'm the only permanent employee in Botswana Diamonds, and I recruit part-time people, consultants, contractors, call it what you will, as and when projects develop. We don't have an office. We're having this conversation from my home office, so it absolutely minimizes the cost to shareholders. I drive my own four-wheel drive vehicle to these itself. And I feel, and I'm very passionate about this point, that we are looking at high risk money going into diamond exploration, and it is people's hard-earned money. So the least I can do is to put as high a possible percentage of that directly in the ground and not have to pay for kind of peripheral issues. And so Southern Africa, one can manage from that particular perspective. But not only that, we also believe, and this is probably the primary reason, that Southern Africa is the most prospective region of the world for new diamond discoveries. And yes, from a political risk perspective, you've got Botswana on the one side. They call it the Switzerland of Africa. Very low political risk, on a par with the best countries in the world. And on the other hand, you have Zimbabwe, which is slowly improving, got a long way to go. And then somewhere in the middle, you've got South Africa, which is also beginning to improve. So we understand the jurisdictions actually very well. And in fact, next week, there is the African Mining Summit in Gaborone. I'm chairing the ministerial session with half a dozen ministers of mines across Africa. So if we were to look anywhere else outside Southern Africa, I would imagine it would be Africa. But having been blessed working with De Beers for so many years, I've worked in nearly all the diamond jurisdictions across the world.
Yeah. Okay. So where else in the world, apart from obviously where you are already exploring and involved in projects, is there, I suppose, a higher concentration or a good concentration of diamonds?
Well, the two major countries outside of Southern Africa would be Russia and Canada.
Okay.
Russia is obviously host to Al Rosa, which is the first or second largest diamond miner, depending on whether you look at carats or value. Canada has a number of producers. De Beers is a producer. The Mountain Province joint venture is a producer, and they have a very active exploration environment, chiefly because the Toronto Stock Exchange is one of the better stock exchanges to raise money for diamond development. But there are also diamond exploration and development projects in Australia, in India, in South America, particularly Brazil and Venezuela. Then as you go into Africa, north of Southern Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Angola are very big, as is West Africa, Sierra Leone and Guinea.
Okay. One question I've just thought of in terms of recruitment and in terms of growing the industry within diamonds, how hard is it to recruit people for certain roles, especially if you're looking for specialists with diamond experience? If there is only, I suppose, a quite small amount of a few number of players in the industry, I imagine obviously as companies grow and as projects grow, you need more and more people. I imagine in terms of recruitment, you have to sort of have a sort of, I suppose, a training system in place where you are bringing people into the industry to specialise in diamonds.
I think there may be two answers to that question. Like any mining environment, many of the jobs would be commoditized. Now, if you're a finance specialist, IT specialist, HR specialist, especially around those support functions, when you go to the very detailed technical design in particular, yes, the design of a kimberlite diamond mine, the process metallurgy, the geology around those kimberlite diamond mines, you would definitely be challenged to try and find the best people in that work. Having worked in the industry for well over 30 years now, as you mentioned in the introduction, you build up a very, very good network of people who you can call upon to look at specific aspects of the work itself. I think overlying that is mines are typically found in very remote areas. So they're areas which sometimes don't have cell phone coverage, for example. They're either very, very hot or very, very cold. You will of course have accommodation, but there might not be nice restaurants, movie places, etc., where you have to go. So you have to pay a premium for people working in remote areas. But the most difficult role actually to find, in my view, is actually a successful diamond explorer. Now, you can get successful diamond geologists who can work on your mine, who are very good at logging the core, interpreting the three-dimensional model, and then supporting the mining engineers and metallurgists in order to mine and then recover the diamonds. But exploration is a very unique skill in that every day is different. And it's not just going in the field, taking samples, looking at the geology. You have to be a ferocious reader of everything that actually happened, going back even 150 years. You have to be a ferocious networker to find out, why did people really leave a project? Because often the publicly reported version will be very different from the privately reported version. And then you have to put that context together with what happened in the past, together with brand new technology, because there's some fascinating stuff going in terms of geophysical and airborne and remote sensing technology to find that unique pin in a haystack and putting that all together. And so finding people like that who have a track record of doing it is really quite difficult.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And I suppose also what I meant by the question I asked is if if you've got obviously like mine engineers, for instance, and they obviously when you get into diamonds, it's probably a commodity that you actually stay in for your entire career. So as the workforce gets older, do you have trouble people attracting people into the diamond industry?
I think the industry has problems attracting people into itself, the
Yeah,
mining
yeah,
industry.
understand. Yeah,
Actually, more than anything else, because people want to work in cities, they want to work in IT, they want to work in finance, they want to do things a lot quicker than possibly you or I did when we were a little bit younger. And that is the mining is seen as a dirty industry
yeah,
by many. I'll give you an example. I visited my alma mater a few months ago, actually in June, the Imperial College Royal School of Mines. When I graduated there over 30 years ago, it was the premier mining school in the world. Anglo-American De Beers from South Africa went there on the milk round and recruited every single year 5 or 10 mining engineers, geologists, and metallurgists. It is now obviously it's still part of Imperial College, and Imperial College is one of the top 10 universities across Europe, particularly in the science and technology. But the people are not going into industry anymore. They're going in to do environmental stuff, research, etc. I asked, well, how many people actually go and do the kind of stuff that I did, or go onto the mines or something like that? And it's a tiny, tiny handful.
yeah.
And that's a reflection on the change in employment patterns across the world. It's a reflection on where Royal School of Mines is at the moment too as well. But it's a reflection on that youngsters don't really want to go and work on mines. That's
Yeah.
the bigger problem, I think.
Yeah, no, yeah, certainly, certainly. I mean, obviously here in the UK, you've obviously got the Imperial College, and also you've got the Campbell School of Mines, and the numbers are dropping each year of people going into a mining related subject, um, and that's happening all across the world. It's not just happening in the UK with a limited, obviously, mining industry, but it's happening all over the world, and obviously especially in Australia and even Canada. Not too sure about America, but I imagine that would be quite similar. Um, it does have an image issue, and I do ask that on some of these other podcasts that that I've produced, and asked that, and there is an image. So I wondered how that can change, or what do you see can change and make people, or not make people. How would you attract people into the industry, or even attract people to go and study at any of these top universities, to go and study a mine engineering degree or a geology degree, or even a processing or processing degree, but obviously focusing on mining?
Well, I've been involved with two initiatives in that respect. One about a month ago, the Geological Society of South Africa held a 3-day workshop with people like myself, talking about our experiences in the industry. And I gave a rather tongue-in-cheek presentation on comparing the role of an exploration geologist and a major compared to a junior. And we probably had about 100 people in the audience, various graduates and people like that, and they were able to listen to us and have lots of interactive sessions. And I've got to report that flowing back from that, there was very strong interest from the local universities here in South Africa, the University of the Witwatersrand, University of Pretoria, University of Cape Town, all of which are in the Global 500 universities. And then earlier this year and 2 years ago, this year hosted by Debswana, the joint venture between the government of Botswana and De Beers, they also had a 2-day workshop with current diamond explorers like myself. They brought out the discoverer of Arapa mine, which was discovered 52 years ago, and they brought him out 50 years ago to give a historical perspective of discovery. But the final year students of the University of Botswana and the Botswana Institute of Technology all attended that. So we had about a dozen people like myself, and a little bit younger and a little bit older, but probably about 150 students were there. So industry and the professional institutions and companies who are led, all get involved with trying to find, the next Manfred Marx or the next really big name in diamond discovery. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, I want to sort of conclude this and wondered if you can tell us what the future outlook is for Botswana Diamonds, and what your company's intentions are moving forward.
I think Rob, there are three major areas we're going to be focused on. The first one is going to be very clearly focusing on the Marsfontein mining permit and development of the Thorny River project area, as they're one and the same in the northern province of South Africa. The Thorny River and Marsfontein mining permit in particular will start to generate cash and will enable us to continue funding our other project areas. The second one is in Botswana, where we continue to work with the liquidators of Maibwe to try and unravel that. And we hope it won't be before long that we will be able to unravel that and commence exploration on that very, very exciting project. And then thirdly, I'd imagine it won't be long as well, where we'll conclude terms with the government of Zimbabwe and we can really get cracking on that exciting Marangi deposit in eastern Zimbabwe. Those are the three major areas of highlight. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, there's lots of other work we're doing too in Botswana Diamonds.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, you gave a really good account of at the beginning of what you're involved in. So yeah, I'm sure you're going to be busy for the foreseeable future. Really, thank you very much, James, for taking the time to do this podcast. I think our listeners would have got a lot of information around obviously diamond mining. Because I imagine a lot of them wouldn't have worked on a diamond mine and may not know much about it. So I really appreciate your time in providing that content. If our audience wants to contact you and ask you any questions, how can they go about doing that?
Well, my contact details are on our corporate website. My contact details are at the bottom of every press release that we put out, and we typically put out a press release every month to 6 weeks, and I'm very available to chat over the phone or by email. Very happy to do so.
Okay. And are you on any social media platforms?
I am on Twitter under the handle Botswana Diamond. We have a Facebook page, Botswana Diamonds. We have a YouTube site, and look for the Botswana Diamonds playlist. We're also on LinkedIn under the Botswana Diamond banner too as well. Yes, Rob, it's a very interesting point that, if I don't put things on social media, it doesn't happen. Yeah. So you'll find this week, for example, I've spent 3 days on our Thorny River and Marsfontein mining permit area, and you'll see, I hope, lots of interesting photographs and commentary on all of that social media in terms of what we are doing.
Yeah, and before we started this podcast, you did actually mention that you've done quite a few podcasts, probably as many as I've actually done myself. So again, I suppose people can search for some podcasts that you've done over the past couple of years. So again, I imagine you can probably Google that, or do you know what platforms your podcast could be on?
Well, because obviously costs is a very important part to us, there is a podcast playlist under my overall playlist in YouTube.
Okay, so yeah, feel free.
I've converted them all into kind of video files, which you can for YouTube, and they're all filed under podcasts under my name as well. You can see the Botswana Diamond ones. You can see even my other companies like the Joburg Ballet, Common Purpose, African Diamonds, Sheffer Gems, which I'm a non-executive director of. I'm very particular in terms of making sure I file history so people can actually see what's happened, what I've said previously, and what I'm saying now.
Yeah. You're certainly ahead of the game with the social media, it seems. I think I need to take some notes from you. Alternatively, obviously, that anyone that's got wants to ask James any questions, alternatively, you can obviously email myself, which is rob@mining-international.org. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. I do encourage guys that are subscribed and listening to share this podcast amongst their colleagues and friends that are in the mining industry. This is a free podcast, and how we can grow this is through word of mouth. So appreciate if you can get them to subscribe. Like I said, it is free, and share some of the posts that I do advertise this podcast on, which is mainly on LinkedIn and Facebook. Because there's obviously the podcast provides a wealth of information and content from industry experts like James, to obviously help and grow a mining professional in terms of your career and catch some of the latest news in the world of mining. So yeah, really appreciate you guys that do subscribe, but appreciate if you can spread the word as well. So until next time, happy mining.
Thanks for listening to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. If there are any topics you want discussed or questions you want to ask any guests, then you can email us at rob@mining-international.org, or you can follow Rob and Mining International on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter and YouTube for more content and to have your questions answered. Until next time, happy mining.